Okay, what this is going to do is basically illustrate what I just said about how a class gets loaded. So we have a pet, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some static variables to this that we may or may not use. Okay, so now without any further information, without any further assignment, then ID will be set to 0. But let me show you what a static constructor is. So what a static constructor is, or a static initializer is actually a better way, is some code that gets executed after the static variables are defined. And if I want it to be something else, I can kind of set it there. Okay? And, all right, so that's in pet. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to actually initialize it to 0. And what I'm going to do is I'm setting debugger breakpoints. In a bit, I'll not this class, of course, but in a bit I'll go through what the debugger is about. That's something that allows me to step through my code and see what it's doing. And then, okay, so here's dog, and I'm going to define another.
So, is this, you could just say, you could do what's happening in static when you initialize the private static in dog tag.
Yeah. Yeah, the only reason I'm initializing it here is so I can put a breakpoint there. It doesn't let me put a breakpoint otherwise, because it's not an executable statement. This is just for illustrative purposes, because, let's see, do I have somewhere I have, okay, so here's a class that I'd written that's going to create some dogs. But what I want to do is when I run it with a debug, see what I've done is I have created breakpoints. Oops, I've tried to create a breakpoint there. Okay, so we have dog, we have its superclass pet, and this will show you, hopefully, that the order of things. So when I run the debugger, it'll stop at my breakpoints. So I ran the debugger. The first breakpoint encountered was the static variable ID of pet, not of dog. Even I instantiated a dog, so it went to load the dog class, but it said, oh, the dog has a superclass pet, and pet has a superclass object. So it looks object is already loaded because object got loaded when the main method the main class got loaded, but then pet wasn't. So now we need to load pet, and part of the loading is the initialization. So you see it stopped there, and that means that it went to pet and not dog. And then if I execute the next statement, it next does the static initializer. So first it did the static variable, and then it did the static initializer. And then the next thing, well, it's going to do a bunch of things. So let's run to the next breakpoint. And then now the next breakpoint is loading, after it's finished loading the pet class, it's now going to load the dog class. And again, first it defines, it specifies all the static variables. Again, what's happening under the hood, it's allocating memory and setting up pointers to where to find stuff. We need to worry about that. All you need to worry about is this is what it does. We don't have to worry about what's happening in memory. So again, first it loads the pet class because that's the superclass, and it keeps loading all, again, it goes from the top of the hierarchy down. Now the next thing is that it's going to load it's going to execute the static initializer next. And then that's going to continue on its way. And once a class is loaded, see what happened here is all that happened on this line right here. In fact, I can show that. Let's put a breakpoint there. All right, so we're right there. And then if we keep running, then we go through the same thing. Pet, the static pet. Load dog, first the static variable, then the static initializer. And then we're finished. So once a class is loaded, it doesn't have to be reloaded. So what happened here is all that happened just on this first time. So in fact, once I declared an instance variable of type dog, it said, oh, I don't know what a dog is because I haven't loaded that class. So I'm going to go to load the dog class. And it says, oh, dog has a superclass, pet. Pet, superclass object, so we can start here. Loads pet, loads dog, and then it can instantiate. And part of the loading is also setting up things so that when you initialize, when you create an instance, then it has places for it. It sets up the logic for all of the methods in that class. I mean, it does a whole bunch of things. But for our purposes, it's important to understand the order that this happens. And the order, this is one of the few places where order of things actually matters. So again, static variables first, then the static initializer, if it's present. If it's not there, so let's, if we cut that out and do this, do the same thing. Okay, so we're going to stop it here. We're going to run it here. So now I've commented out the static initializer, and so now it's not going to get executed, and we move on to the next class. Okay, so that's what's kind of going on under the hood, and I mean it's important not to understand absolutely every detail of this, but just sort of the general picture. In other words, loading classes is something that gets done once and has to be done before you can instantiate things or use anything in that class. And then within the class, the this and super are important to understand how to reuse things that are in the super classes that have been overloaded. Okay, so I will see you back here in about an